Today we have In Your House, number 6,
Yes.
known as Rage in the Cage.
Interesting show.
Yeah. This was February of 1996. This took place in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes.
There's about 5,500 people in attendance, and commentary was done by Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler.
Is this? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this was almost in Lawler's backyard with the USWA.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I believe this is the first In Your House that we've covered, right? This is the 6th one, but have we covered an In Your House before?
Did we cover the first or the second one? No, because that's when they gave away an actual house.
Yeah. No, I was just because I don't recall us talking about kind of the In Your House concept before and kind of what we thought of it with the, it's a shorter show. Not everyone's on it, but it's like they charge less for it.
Yeah, this is the first In Your House that we have covered.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an interesting, just having it be a shorter show. Not everybody is going to be featured on it. You're not going to get like every title defended, etc. But they charge a smaller price for it. I know, I kind of like that it's a shorter show. Like even just covering it, it's sort of because sometimes when I see those really long shows, it's like, okay, like,
yeah,
this will probably take me a couple sittings to take all my notes and get through this and stuff. And I liked it was just a shorter show, less matches.
And from what I understand, that was by design. This would allow them to have a premium event, still a pay-per-view back then, and to work on advancing some of the storylines and everything. But it's not going to cut in to like the big 5 now with King of the Ring.
Right. And it would give guys like Mr. In Your House, Mick Foley, a chance to like main event and stuff. Like as he says, no one came through more when it mattered less than Mr. In Your House, Mick Foley.
That's truth in advertising.
So we have a little intro here with like a cube that looks like it's coming out of water with the WWF logo, just kind of fun. They have a clip of Sunny. She's at the beach saying the show contains material that is too hot for some and that viewer discretion is advised. And I remember I had a poster on my wall of Sunny when I was a teenager wearing that exact bikini.
That's right. Yeah. That's cool.
As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, wow, that brought me back to like being 16.
Yeah. Yep. Sunny has been kicking off all of the parental advisories. I'm not sure what to call them.
Yeah, because she was taking a bath in the last one we covered, and this one she's at the beach, and she was pretty versatile. She could be used in a number of ways, and she always kind of came through, I think.
Yeah, they could put her in these cute little edgy clips to kick off a show, put her out at ringside as a manager.
Have her hang out with the Bill Clinton impersonator, sitting on his lap, spilling popcorn down her cleavage, saying suggestive things.
I bet for a lot of the guest stars at some of the events, she was a great ambassador for the company to them.
That's the thing, because she was smart. She did know the business, and so she could be used in a number of ways with interviews or in-ring segments, being a manager. She was very versatile.
So there wasn't a whole lot of information on this particular show that was out there. Conrad and Pritchard did do, it was just a little over an hour long, where they kind of reviewed it. Um, it was Pritchard was in quite a foul mood. He was
Okay.
at one point he was really frustrated because he's like, Conrad, you got me up so early. And I know they do typically record early in the morning, or they used to at least. Um, and almost all of the questions that came from people either submitting them or from Conrad, uh, you could tell Pritchard did not do any research at all and would passive aggressively deflect. um, there was very little knowledge that he bestowed upon us for this in your house.
Oh, okay. They do a little video package hyping up the main event, Brett versus Diesel 4. Um, and they kind of talk about the whole like Brett, Diesel, Undertaker trilogy and how they're all kind of intertwined. And the video package kind of pretty much gives away like, okay, Taker's getting involved in the main event. Like,
Yep. Yeah, they're gonna lay down some groundwork so him and Diesel can meet at Mania.
yeah, that's all. Like the Royal Rumble and this, that's all it is, and I'll get into it more detail in the main event. But Brett just helping set up Taker and Diesel, which is a great use of your champion.
Yep, because at Rumble they put him and Taker together,
Yeah.
um, which was not a bad match. But I think you hit the nail right on the head that this was Taker's best match, and
So
possibly
far, we
yeah,
need to make that clear. So out of all the ones we've covered so far, it was his
yeah,
best match.
yeah, and arguably um,
Brett's worst.
at least one of Brett's worst or Brett's worst.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did have. This wasn't shown on the network, but there was a free for all match with Jake the Snake Roberts going over to Tonka with Ted DiBiase.
Okay.
This was, I believe, right at the beginning of Jake's comeback, being sober, finding God, and trying to work religion into his comeback character. Um, at I can't remember if it was here. There was one interview where his new snake is not named Damien; it's named Revelation,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is the name of the last book at the end of the New Testament. So um, Steve Austin will make um, Jake's religious comeback a big part of his victory speech in a few months.
Yes, he will.
But yeah, he went over to Tonka, a match that I could not find to watch. It was just about 5 minutes long.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
Yeah, so we also have just I enjoy the dated graphics and stuff, and they just have like a little dated in your house graphic that just made me smile because it's one of those like if you didn't know what era the show was, you could tell by watching the graphics and stuff, and listening to the music and stuff, and it was fun. Um, so then the first match on the show, on the pay-per-view broadcast, Razor Ramon versus 123 Kid in a crybaby match, and it is announced the loser will be diapered and baby bottled. I didn't know baby bottled was a verb, but I have no recollect. I had no recollection of this match ever happening, and when I heard these two were wrestling and this was the stipulation, I was very excited. I'll be honest. I was like, I hope they don't screw us over on this finish.
And they did not.
And they didn't. And it's like, you know that Razor's not wearing a diaper. So you know how this is going to turn out. But they really squeezed every last drop out of this feud between these two because this had been going on for a long time between Razor and Kid.
Yeah.
Um,
This was months after uh, the Kid turned heel. And it was a match with, I believe, Sid and Razor, where the Kid was the referee.
Yeah, like so like yeah, they show a bunch of clips of like the kid basically just like fucking with Razor. And I will say like cuz I've been critical before of not liking the 1-2-3 Kid as a heel. I like him better as a baby face, at least as the 1-2-3 Kid. Um but when he like the clips of him like fucking with Razor, it was really good. He was good at it. It's just being like this little like you just want to get your hands around that little neck of his and wring it. And so he was good at being the instigator here.
Yep. My
Um,
main complaint about his heel turn is his 1-2-3 music. It was never changed. He didn't even come out to DiBiase's theme.
yeah, you mentioned that before, and you're absolutely right. But yeah, so I was excited for this. So Kid comes out with DiBiase and a toy stroller with a plush Razor Ramon bear. Um, so yeah, this not surprisingly was a great match. You've got two guys that are both individually great, and they have good chemistry together. They work together many times. Kind of just a lot of quick back and forth action. Really good chemistry.
Hmm.
King had a lot of fun with this stipulation on commentary, just cracking jokes the way he did. Lots of Razor was such an ugly baby, blah blah,
Yeah.
whatever. Lots of those kind of jokes. Uh, they used a lot of baby powder in the match.
Yeah, and that would have a uh, kind of a prominent spot at the end, right by the finish too.
Yeah, so there's DiBiase at one point throws baby powder in Razor's face. Um, Kid was just he was in very fine form here, although they did screw up a spot together, but they did kind of regroup.
Yeah, I went back and watched it. Not to be nitpicky, but I believe Kid was coming off the ropes and their timing was off. They got a little, I don't want to say off script because that's not really accurate, but kind of off script. And you can see Razor visibly get mad, and he kind of yelled something at Kid.
It
And
looked like that was going to end up maybe in one of those Razor choke slams, and they didn't get to it.
yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm like I couldn't tell what it was going to be, but it looked like maybe that's what it was going to end up being. But they had to regroup. I mean, it happens.
Yeah, and Kid then jumps on Razor's back for like a sleeper, and Razor just stands there, moves the hair out of his mouth, and I mean is just literally looking around. Um, I mean, no selling it really would be kind of generous,
And
and
they did it kind of for a while too.
yeah,
Like they did the sleeper thing for quite a while.
yeah, um, yeah, yeah. Again, not to be nitpicky because these guys, are both phenomenal, and this was a great match.
Yeah,
That
I
just kind
really
of
did
stuck out.
enjoy this, but yeah, there were a couple things that we can nitpick here and there. Um, the crowd was 1,000% behind Razor here.
Yeah.
Um,
This was right around when Razor would give his notice too.
yeah, yep,
Um, I know he faxed his notice to Vince, and then he mysteriously failed a drug test,
right.
so he was off TV for his last 4 or 6 weeks before showing up on Nitro.
Yeah. Um, so is this the last appearance on pay-per-view of
Yep.
Razor?
Yeah.
Because he's not at Mania, right?
No, that was going to be him and Goldust in a
Yeah,
Miami
a
street
Miami
fight.
street fight.
Yeah, and so
They
and
came up with something else to do that worked out okay
yeah,
for Goldust.
yeah, they sure did. But yeah, this is Razor's last pay-per-view appearance at the company.
Wow. So I just wrote a note like halfway through this match. I'm like, I really do want to see someone diapered and fed the baby bottle. Like, as the match is going on, I'm like, wait, like, are they going to do this? Like, because I had never seen this match before. Um, DiBiase distracts the ref and Razor. The kid gets the baby powder, and then Razor kicks it in his face. There's a Razor's Edge. Um, Razor pulls the kid up at 2, and then I'm like, oh fuck, kid's gonna win this because that whenever someone does that, they
It's like the
lose.
kiss of death.
Right. But this was the exception. There's a second Razor's Edge. He gets the pin. Um, and then like Razor has such great facials when the crowd realizes like what that means, and he just plays it off with his great
Yeah,
facials.
he's like,
You know what we got to do now? Like, so he's squirting the bottle on Kid's face. He powders his crotch. Like the way he was doing it, it's like, oh, he's a dad. Like, like he's doing it like he's done this before.
yeah,
Um,
he went all out.
um, and it was fun. The crowd was into it. So yeah, he was going to powder the kid. DiBiase runs in. He gets powder to the face. And then yeah, Razor just diapers him like a pro. Like it was amazing how quickly he got that together. Like it's like okay, he's a dad. Like it's just because it wasn't awkward or anything. It was like
Yep.
familiar territory.
Yeah, he had the kid on his back, lifting up his legs,
Yeah.
powdered him, lifted him up to slide the diaper underneath his butt.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fun match. Like, I'm glad they delivered on the stipulation of, like I said, of course, Razor is not, going in, Razor's not getting a diaper put on him. So, and a kid sells it like $1,000,000 when he comes to, like he doesn't realize what happened right away, and then he realizes and sells it. And um, yeah, like I love like he gets up not knowing what happened, and he's like posing like he's ready for a fight, like he's in a martial arts stance, and then like he realizes what happened and sells it. It's very good.
Yeah,
Uh, like
and
he's acting like he won, and then like he looks like he's about to cry when he realizes what happened.
which is perfect for a crybaby match.
Yeah, so this was exactly what this match should have been. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, and after Razor had the diaper on, he kind of antiques the kid in the face with a whole bunch of baby powder.
Yeah.
Um, and then they got like that big bottle, and he's just squirting it all over his face, and um, it was they went all out and they delivered. They did have someone had a sign in the audience that said the 1, 2, 3 baby.
Yeah, not the most clever sign. I did notice that, but
Yeah.
so then they cut to backstage. We've got Ray Rougeau and Sonny's acting seductive, and Rougeau's making cheesy jokes, and they show footage of the two of them in the free for all, and where Jake is scaring Sonny with the snake.
Hmm.
So not a whole lot there, but it was fine.
Yeah, and I believe it was right around here. Vince says, "Let's go backstage to America Online."
Yeah. So up next, we've got. I forgot that this was as featured of a feud as this was for a while.
Yeah,
The Blue Blood, Hunter Hearst Helmsley from Greenwich, Connecticut, taking on Duke the Dumpster Drosy. I just get a nice nostalgic feeling going back and watching this era of Triple H.
yeah,
Because I remember being a fan of him even back then. I'm like, this guy's good, man. Like, um,
and he
plus I was
played
always
that.
jealous of his hair because he had a gorgeous head of hair, man.
Yeah, he had one of his valets with him.
Yeah, I thought the way they were really, really playing her up on the announcers, that she was gonna be like more involved in the match. The fact that they drew that much attention to her, they
Yeah,
said her name. I didn't write it down, but they said her name a bunch of times, and um, they've got Pettingill interviewing Drosy. Um,
Drosy got a haircut,
yeah,
and his ring attire was changed up uh, just a little bit. He wasn't in like the full garbage man garb. He had like the suspenders and everything, and
yeah,
I believe they announced that he has a new finisher called the Trash
Trash
Compactor.
cup. Yep. Yeah, and they showed the footage of Triple H cutting Drosy's hair. Um, so like they're kind of playing up like, is there going to be some payback here with the hair thing? I know a couple points during the match, Drosy's grabbing Hunter by the hair, throwing him by the hair, so it's like they are kind of teasing like, is he going to cut Hunter's hair? And
Yeah.
um, this is without a doubt got to be the high point of Duke Drosy's career.
Yeah.
Like,
This year was a good year for, um, I don't want to say like jobbers, but enhancement talent for sure.
yeah. Um, and
Horowitz got a big push from last year into here, and uh, Duke the Dumpster Drosy is programmed with Hunter Hearst Helmsley for a little while.
I'm glad you brought that up because I do have a note here that like I did kind of want to talk to you about like kind of that like in the modern era of wrestling like jobbers don't exist and squash matches don't exist, and that was such a big part of wrestling for such a long time. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, was that a good thing? Did it serve a purpose? Or do you think it's sort of,
Back then, or the fact that they've kind of gotten rid of that in the modern era?
well, like back in the day, like, do you think it served a purpose? Do you think it was good to have those guys around where it's like, because all of those job guys were very capable kind of journeyman performers. It wasn't like they were nobodies, even though they were featured that way. But it's
Yeah,
like they were guys that were actually, very good at what they did. And, their job was to just go out and make the stars look like stars. I mean, like WWF back in the day, if you watched on television, you didn't see, Hogan versus DiBiase. You saw Hogan versus a job guy and DiBiase versus a job guy. And if you wanted to see Hogan versus DiBiase or those main event caliber guys go against each other, you had to pay for a ticket and go to see it live.
yep.
So I
Or
do
buy
think
it
it
on pay per view.
right. So I think that like you had to pay to see the stars wrestle the stars. So I think for that era it served a purpose. But I don't know, like I kind of watching this, it was like I kind of miss having the job guys around. Like where what's going to happen, but for some I don't know.
Yeah, I get that.
Do you think
Um,
maybe it outlived its usefulness or something?
well, I know because we're right around the transition from primetime wrestling to Monday Night Raw,
Yeah.
and typically, you would have to wait for the main event, even on like a television program. And then once Nitro and Raw started going head to head, um, it- at at some point that gets kind of flipped, and so you have maybe your champion or one of the top guys come out to the ring to kick off the show, kind of set the tone, um, yeah, build up whatever's going to happen at the end. But they uh, started kind of blowing their load like in the very beginning of the show. And for back then, it was the chance for and maybe guys who were up and coming to be on TV, to be in the ring with some of the uh, bigger name guys. And so um, back when you were essentially almost working for free, you were working to be on TV with these guys. Um, I don't know if that could really be a thing today, though.
I don't think we could go back to it cuz like the next point that I was thinking of as we were talking about this is that back in the day with the job guys, where that's mostly what you saw on TV and stuff, that when you got to see those big matches, whether it was in your town and you got to pay, you paid for a ticket and went to go see it, or if it was pay per view, those big matches seemed big and they seemed special versus, you know, giving away pay per view match quality, pay per view quality matches on TV for free. The the pay-per-view quality matches seemed less special because you could also see something of that caliber for free.
Yep.
So that is one thing I do think having jobbers. wrestle stars regularly did is it made those big matches seem more special
Yeah,
because you didn't get to see them often, and when you did, it was a big deal.
yeah. And back then, your show on TV was essentially a long commercial
Right.
for the live events or for the pay-per-view events. Um, and I think that made sense for the time there. Um, uh, Also, speaking of Raw and Nitro kind of going to war too, um, WCW would start giving away, in some instances, huge matches that are still
Yeah.
significant, like even today. Um, Hogan and Goldberg is the big one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think the format back then made more sense once they started introducing kind of uh, more championships and changed up the formula. It did start to seem like the product was kind of being watered down all around.
Yeah.
Um, and now today, my biggest complaint as a jaded Attitude Era fan is almost nothing means anything. Um,
Right.
the curtain has been kind of completely pulled back on kayfabe. So I don't know. I think it definitely made sense back then, and like you had just said too, um, it it builds up anticipation for those high level championship matches, and made those matches when they did happen mean a lot more
Especially
than
because they had so few pay-per-views back then too, so it was a really big deal, even just having a title defended.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I do think that that was one pro about how they did things, back in the day was, that it did make those big things seem very special.
Yeah, yeah, and that made it worth your money to
Yeah.
either buy a ticket or to buy it on pay-per-view. There's a
Yeah.
lot more build up, and uh, we anticipated those matches a lot more as well.
Yeah. It was something you looked forward to for months.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts once we uh, get past the main event. I have some thoughts about how In Your House really affected that, even if it was a cheaper event. This is where they're going to start doing a pay-per-view every month.
Right. Which meant the
Um,
guys on the other channel are going to do a pay-per-view every month, and then,
yeah,
you know, the fans only have so much money and they got to pick and choose. And
and even with this one, there's 5,000 people in attendance. That arena is noticeably tiny.
yeah.
um, but yeah, I have some thoughts about uh, what they started to do with In Your House once we get past the main event.
Oh, okay. So the match itself, like Drosy runs to the ring like he's the Ultimate Warrior, and the two go at it like right out of the gate. I got a kick because there's still baby powder all over the mat.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a guy with a broom. Like, did you see that?
I didn't notice the guy with the broom, but I did notice that there was still baby powder all over the mat.
Yeah, when they came back to start introducing Hunter, there was a guy in the ring with a broom trying to clean up a little bit.
Oh, okay. So I kind of forgot. Like Drossy's really big.
Yeah,
It's a big man. Like when I saw that him in the ring and next to Hunter and stuff, like that's a big boy.
yeah.
So he's throwing around Hunter by the hair. He does like a nice press slam. He's looking pretty good here. Credit where
Yeah,
it's still, um, perhaps one of the worst gimmicks of all time, but
he was making it work.
certainly a capable performer, and he's tossing Hunter around. Hunter's selling great for him. King is cozying up next to the valet.
Yeah,
They
that's
keep
right.
they keep cutting to that. Like
Yeah,
he's
they
like
seated
sitting right.
her right next to the commentators.
Yeah, so he's like cozying up to her and asking her questions and stuff, and King's having fun with that. King was in good form here on this show.
Yeah.
Between all the jokes about the baby stipulation before, and then now he's, there's a nice looking woman, so of course he's going to have fun with that.
Hmm.
Um,
I
the
did notice in the crowd, right, in the view of the hard camera, someone held up a sign that said "Hello, USWA fans."
I did see that, yeah, and I didn't make the connection that you made with that they're close to the USWA's home base there.
Yeah, and this was also when Vince and Jerry Lawler had kind of like an invasion angle where you would
Yeah,
see WWF guys wrestling at USWA events.
yeah.
And I know um, Brett also, he made at least one appearance in the USWA as
I believe
champion.
I believe Taker as well.
Yeah. And so it wasn't just the guys you'd see in the free for all. Those are big
Yeah,
ticket guys.
yeah, for sure. So Hunter goes to do the pedigree. It's countered into an inverted atomic drop, which is very much mid '90s move. Uh, and prior, it kind of stopped being used around this time, shortly after this. But Drosy does a nice spine buster.
Yeah.
Uh, it's time to take out the trash. He does a nice tilt-a-whirl slam, which he's dubbed the trash compactor. Grabs a garbage can that's at ringside. The ref takes it away. Hunter cracks Drosy with the lid for the pin.
Yep.
Um, I mean, solid match. There's, nothing bad here, but nothing exceptional either.
Agreed. And when the ref had his back turned, when Hunter does grab the lid, afterwards, I think he's trying to hide the evidence, and
Yeah.
like the lid falls out of his hand and like bumps the ref in the head.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. But no, I agree. This was a really solid match all around. It was good, and this was I don't think we're gonna see Trocy too much longer after this, but um, he got a new look. He got his own finisher, and I think programming him with Hunter made a lot of sense too.
Yeah, because that's just character-wise, those are two guys that just could not be more different. So it worked, and um,
Kind of like Henry Godwin and Hunter
yeah,
as
and I
well.
think that was at the time where Hunter was kind of being punished for the curtain call, so he was having slot matches and shit like that, and getting mud in his pretty hair, and
Yeah. And this is also at least a rematch from the free for all at the Royal Rumble.
yeah, yeah. So they had, there was a backstory here, a history between these two.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of did some things like you alluded to with guys like Duke Drosy and Horowitz and stuff, and it got over. So
Yeah.
good for them.
Yeah. Like those were kind of the swerves of this day.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sure, give the guy a little bit of, a guy like Horowitz a little bit of a run. Why not?
Yeah.
Or even like Brooklyn Brawler from time to time, they do a little something with him. Like, sure, why not? Reward a guy for his loyalty.
Yeah.
He put in the time and the work.
Yeah. And that was also a good way um, to have us take Skip even less seriously than we did before.
So up next, we have a very dated ad for the WWF shop, and I had to pop because one of the things they were marketing was an Undertaker sweatshirt, and I had that design on a T-shirt.
I remember.
It wasn't a sweatshirt; it was a T-shirt, but it was the same design with him in the tombstone, and he had the arms folded over his chest.
Yeah.
And then they also had ones for like Sean and Brett and stuff. But I love that they keep stuff like that in. I like seeing things that date, these shows.
Yeah, no, I remembered that Taker shirt that you had.
Yeah.
You had the Sean one too, didn't you?
Not that specific one, no. The thing about, because, Sean is my favorite wrestler of all time. And the thing with that kind of sucks is a lot of his shirts aren't that great to me. I don't like a lot of his shirts. Certain people had lots of cool shirts, like Taker or Hunter or Brett. And then there's some people where it's like, because I have a ton of wrestling shirts, and there's people I like a lot, and it's like none of their shirts are good. I don't like any of their shirts, like,
Yeah,
and it sucks. And then there's some people where it's like they're okay, but they have cool ass shirts, and
yeah. I think some of Sean's best merch would be DX stuff that they would make not too long from now.
yeah, there was some decent stuff there. But yeah, so even back in the day, I'm like, ugh, I didn't have a lot of Sean stuff, which it's not that I didn't like the guy, but a lot of his shirts I just wasn't crazy about.
Yeah.
So then they show footage of dudes with attitudes versus Yoko and Davey. Davey accidentally cost Yoko the match. They show Yoko attacking Cornette. Owen and Davey attack Yoko. Yoko is pissed. Um, and then Doc Hendricks says Yokozuna is speaking for the first time because Cornette wouldn't let him before.
Mm.
Um, it's an okay Yokozuna promo, but it's funny because it's just sort of like that, like it's just such a Samoan accent he has for a guy who's supposed to be Japanese.
Yeah.
He's so clearly Samoan. Uh,
Yeah. And it was a okay little promo. I
okay
think
is exactly how I described it as well.
yeah. And it is significant because he's gonna say something other than just yelling bonsai.
Bonsai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um yeah, this was even just like remembering it, splitting him from Camp Cornette, kind of on his own, which didn't last long, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with Vader coming in and being managed by Cornette, because it's sort of like, okay, if he's got Yoko and Vader, like he wins. That's
Yeah,
like end of story. So it's like, okay, let's turn Yoko babyface and have Corny with Vader and push him as the new monster heel. And
yeah, and this was also, I believe, the biggest that Yoko was when he was still with the
yeah,
company,
yeah,
like legitimately over 600 pounds.
yeah,
I'll give him credit though; uh, he would get winded pretty quick, but he was still really agile for a 600-pound guy who's not 7 feet tall.
yeah. And he had it in bursts. He would do like quick bursts of like really impressive stuff physically, and then he'd need to kind of cool down for a minute,
Yeah,
which, you know, certainly understandable. I know the company was trying their best to get him to drop some weight, and he just wasn't having it. And
yeah,
like they tried, they wanted to keep him around, they wanted him to be healthier, and it just wasn't in the cards. But I've heard Pritchard talk a lot about how hard they tried,
yeah,
and they'd send him to facilities, and he'd sneak in buckets of fried chicken and shit, and
yeah,
come out heavier than he went in, so but here, yeah, we've got British Bulldog managed by Jim Cornette versus Yoko. So we have babyface Yokozuna, which is interesting.
yeah.
um, I
This,
would also describe this as okay.
yeah, yep. I think because I was excited to see Yoko not in a casket match.
Yeah,
Um, and also, this is where, like, whenever I think of the British Bulldog, this is the look that I associate with him the most. I grew up watching the braided hair on Bulldog. But
Yeah.
this is where he, because after him and Dynamite were split apart, yeah, he beat Brett for the title in
Mm.
England. But I think uh, most of his more high profile parts of his career would kind of come from here.
Yeah, and I like the pairing of like him and Owen. I thought was one of those really great underrated tag teams of their era
Yeah,
because they were two guys with very different styles that brought something different to the table. And then having Cornette manage them, I thought I really liked that trio, and they had awesome matches in Psychology.
yeah,
And Owen could fly around, and he had all the personality and charisma, and then Davey was the muscle, and I just really liked that trio. And Davey
agreed.
had a lot of really good matches around this time.
Yeah,
So Yoko at one point goes for the bonsai drop, and Cornette pulls Davey out. Um, there are points where the match really starts to pick up. Like I said, like with Yoko, it's like he kind of has those quick bursts, and then he kind of settled down. He does a nice Samoan drop and a nice
yeah,
belly to belly. Just looks devastating.
yeah. And like
Uh,
you can hear the crowd gasp,
yeah,
for those big high impact moves.
and then even just the sound of the impact when he does like the belly to belly, like it just reverberates. Cornette comes in and hits Yoko with a racket, which mildly annoys Yokozuna.
Yeah,
But that causes a DQ. Cornette begs off. Vader runs out, and then Yoko and Vader square off, which is just such a cool visual.
yep,
Davey and Vader double team Yoko. Vader handcuffs Yoko to the rope. Yoko fights back with one hand, and this kind of goes on for a while. A bunch of officials come out and there's pull aparts. But I thought it was a good way to turn Yoko babyface. I thought it was a good way to highlight Vader,
yeah.
who's kind of fresh coming in, aligning him with Corny and Davey. So I thought storyline wise, this was smart. It did what it needed to do.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think for all the things they were trying to accomplish, they did those things really well.
yeah, it definitely it did everything it was supposed to do for sure. Like they put the pieces in place where they needed to be, and it was well done.
Yeah, when I listened to Conrad and Pritchard talk about this, Conrad had said that the reason Vader was wearing the coat is that he had just had some type of surgery and he had stitches.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I believe he said on each side of his torso, and so that's why he had the jacket on, and he
Oh,
said
okay.
that even with just doing kind of like easy run-ins like this, that Vader would still tear those. Um,
Oh, I see. I didn't know about that.
I did not either.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like you said, the visual of him and Yoko um, in the ring and like opposing each other is a really cool look. It's a
Oh, yeah.
great look, um, and uh, breaking Yoko away and then having Vader come in. No, it's almost like they traded in their monster heel for a newer, bigger, badder, nicer monster
Yeah,
heel.
like Cornette traded up.
Yeah,
Yeah. So up next, I've put over every time we've covered Goldust, just how much I love Goldust in this era. We have Goldust and Marlena on an AOL chat.
yeah,
Again, I love things that date these shows like this. Goldust just says a lot of suggestive things while gently caressing the moderator, who has zero reaction.
yep.
None.
Do you know what visual I got when I saw this
What's that?
in Arrested Development when
Okay.
Job had one of the employees sit on his lap in the chair? I think he's trying to show him like where the chair squeaks, and he's just kind of.
Yes.
This
I know
is
exactly that scene, and you're on the money.
Yeah, and that guy was a pro. The moderator guy in the chat room, he did not sell any of that.
Not one bit.
Yep. And that's the thing. I think because he wasn't selling it, and the kind of atmosphere that they were setting up with this, um, this was really comical for me.
I enjoyed it. And then Marlena's just there looking sexy, not saying anything, just got her cigar. She's just chilling. Like, I just love that pairing. Like Goldust in this era was so good.
Yeah,
And yeah, credit to whoever that moderator was for his performance or lack thereof.
yeah.
So up next, we've got the Heartbreak Kid versus Owen Hart. Sean is putting up his WrestleMania 12 title shot again that he just earned from winning the Rumble against Owen.
hmm
Um,
I wanted to get your thoughts on that because I know we both love the Rumble. That's something that you earn in. There would be times in the more modern eras where I think before they introduced Money in the Bank, the winner of the Rumble can lose their spot for a title shot at Mania. Um, how do you take a look and view this?
well, I mean, the thing is, you've got to do something between Rumble and Mania because it's not like they're a month apart. So there's a gap in between, and that's kind of tricky because you do have to do things to fill the time in between that's entertaining. So and I think at this point, the whole putting your Rumble title shot on the line hadn't been overused yet.
Yeah,
Now it's just a given, and it has been for a long time. I don't think they had done a whole lot of that at this point. And I think in this case, because Sean and Owen had a history, which they did a good job of, they do a video package on Sean being attacked by 247 Marines, and the concussion angle with the Insiguri and Owen bragging. Um, so there was a history there. There was a reason that it was Owen
yeah,
getting this shot. So I think in this case it was okay. There are other times where it's like, and now it's I think just kind of standard issue. That's what you do
yeah,
between the Rumble and Mania if you're the Rumble winner. In this case, I felt like there was a good reason for it. It's a good excuse to have a good Shawn match
yeah,
on the pay-per-view before Rumble.
yeah. And him and Owen, well, yeah, that's like I thought this was a really good match overall. Um, I'm not trying to jump ahead of it, but this makes a lot of sense too. Um, Putting those two together is they're always going to perform. That's going to be a delivery every time that they are paired together.
This was a good match, although I do have some issues with how it was presented, which I'll get to. Um, so yeah, I don't have a problem with this, and it made sense to me. Cornette is back again. He got a really good recuperative 10-second break in between matches because he was just out there for Yoko and Vader and Davey.
Yeah,
So Cornette's back again. They show Pettengill backstage with Sean. Um, and I just got a kick out of Vince. Todd, do you have him? Do you have him? This was just full on Vince bias with just, just his erection just does not ever go away when Shawn is like, "Do you have him, Todd? Do you have Shawn Michaels backstage? Is he with you, Todd?" Like,
Yep. I know we've always kind of poked fun, but in this event, we could just hear Vince the self-flagellating under the table. When they even
oh, we'll
just
talk about it.
but
So,
yeah,
so Todd does have him, and Shawn says he guarantees he'll get through Owen and he'll go to Mania. Um,
very sure of himself.
yeah. Shawn has never been short on confidence. So Shawn makes his entrance, and we don't see Shawn. His music's playing. We don't see Shawn, and then he's. It's funny because you had asked about this not that long ago, and when he made this entrance, and here we have it. He's on top of the In Your House set, shaking his ass, and
Boy, was he.
uh, and then he swings down on the rope.
I do want to note one thing. Um, they had a little pyro on top of the house with him that went off before he swung down.
Yes, yes, they did.
He would get pyro before the match. They would do that, and then there'd be some more, I believe, once he got in the ring. So I don't know if it'd be double pyro or maybe more like 1.5 because they didn't want to do
Yeah,
too much when he was standing on the roof.
right. Yeah. Um, so, yeah, so Shawn, there's a rope there. He grabs a rope and he swings off the In Your House set. Um, in case you ever wondered what Vince McMahon having an orgasm sounds like, you got to hear it when Shawn swung on the rope. He soiled his pants there. The crowd is loving this. This is just kind of Shawn is just untouchable here, and they got a lot of shots of like girls in the crowd like checking out Shawn, eyeballing Shawn, and
When he dropped from the rope, he like that was like a 10-foot drop.
yeah, he that could have gone wrong, but I mean,
Yeah, and like he didn't even uh, stutter at all when he landed. Like that was a big drop. He landed
yep,
on his feet and was just right back to shaking that ass all the way to the ring.
yep. I always like the shots of whenever they have, like someone like, Sean or like Ravishing Rick Rude is another one. I always like when they get shots of women in the crowd that are, like, ooh, like look at this, like,
Yeah, those were
checking out whoever.
those were two guys who could pull that character or at least that aspect of their character off flawlessly.
Yeah. Um, so I really enjoyed this. So they're working, and Sean slides through Owen's legs, runs outside the ring, and just takes a lap. And he's just high fiving fans. He high fives Vince. He kisses a little girl and a grown woman.
Yeah.
Vince and the woman both needed smelling salts afterwards. Um,
And I don't know either way, but the way that woman reacted, that seemed like a very spontaneous in the moment type of thing.
it did seem very. I would be surprised if it wasn't, because it did seem. Yeah,
Yep.
it seemed legit.
Yeah. Do you remember? I think it was some type of event in Springfield where he had to come back for court because there was a fan who alleged that I don't, I think that he had assaulted some woman. Um,
Yes, I
and
do remember hearing something about that.
yeah, it was all crap.
Yeah,
But I just remember seeing on the news that he had to come back for court, and I
that's right.
remember,
I forgot all about that. I do remember hearing something about that, and I remember it was either dropped or Sean won, or like I get whatever it was. There was nothing to it, but
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That was in Springfield. I
Yep.
forgot all about that.
I remember thinking like we should get like a ride to the courthouse and
Yeah.
try to go get a picture or an autograph or something.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have been in the mood.
Yep. Well, um,
Sean's known for his temper. I'm sure he was in a pleasant mood that day, having to go to Springfield, Mass, for a bullshit case.
that is true. Although there is video footage when the giant I think he was at like a restaurant or something, and some guy came up and like slapped him in the back of the head, and so Paul White stood up and then busted that guy's face, like broke his eye socket and stuff like that. When he had to go to court for that, he was signing autographs outside the courtroom in his suit and everything.
He has a reputation of being a nicer fellow than the Heartbreak Kid, I think.
Yep, that's true.
um, so then, okay, so Sean gets back in the ring, and
Yeah.
then they flip it. Owen slides through Sean's legs, goes outside, and he goes to high five the fans, and there's no takers. That was fantastic.
It sure was.
That was so good.
Yeah, I popped really big for that. I got such a kick.
Yeah. I just like the contrast of like this is what the crowd feels about Sean, and he's kissing girls and high-fiving fans, and they love it. And Owen's like, "No, we're good. We don't need to high-five you." um, Sean does a kind of a flying crossbody off the top to the floor. At which point Vince throws his panties at Sean. Um, then Vince has an aneurysm, and then there's a bunch of Victorian ladies fanning his face. Uh, Vince has never seen anything this good. He can't take it.
Yeah,
Uh,
when Sean was doing his victory lap, when he got to the announce table, like Vince, I think, was already standing up, waiting for that high five. Ah, just the most unprofessional.
Vince treated Sean in this era like he was like the dumpy, ugly, nerdy chick that is finally getting attention from the captain of the football team. And he can't believe his luck. Like, that's how
Yeah,
he conducted himself on air.
I don't think I could describe that any better than what you had just said. Shamelessly, shamelessly, just throwing his panties at Sean, like you said.
Like, it's funny now, but it's like if you're someone like Brett and you see this, like, how, or Taker or someone like, how frustrating is this got to be? Like, what the fuck, dude?
Well, and Brett would go on in later years to share his thoughts on how he did take this at the time, and
Yeah.
and surprisingly, he was not on board for this. Um, specifically, um, uh, once they would get to WrestleMania 12, and which we'll cover. Um, I believe that's next week.
I think so.
Um, and I remember just going back, Sean's entrance there, which we'll cover. And there's just one thing. Once Brett comes out, he's like, "You're likely to hear." They're talking about like the ovation for Sean and his entrance. He's like, "You're likely to hear the same thing out of respect for Sean's opponent." Yeah, it was just shameless.
Vince had a new toy. Brett was the old toy, just collecting dust at the bottom of the toy box.
Yep.
It's just shameless, and there were so many things here that was just funny to me, just with Vince.
Yep. And Sean was, this was his time,
Yeah,
and um, his little victory lap just tickled me so much. Like I I really don't think that was something that was planned. But Sean got out there, he ate it up, and the fans ate it up, and you know, I'm sure it was frustrating to some of the guys back then, but Sean had the spotlight. He did earn it, and he was going to enjoy every minute of it until this. I did kind of pop for that, and again, just Owen coming out. I mean, what a pro.
Mm. Shout out
Yeah,
to Owen.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so and that's the thing. Sean was so like this era of Sean, you could tell he was having fun.
Yeah,
Like he was so happy the boyhood dream was coming true, and I know people have made fun of that, but it was legit.
mhm.
Um,
He was
you know,
eating it up.
and he just did a lot of fucking around out there and just a lot of spontaneous things. Um, like he gets back in the ring and he's like tussling Owen's hair
Yeah,
like you would like a little boy. Um, and then it's funny because my next note is all of this playfulness is entertaining, but I hope it gets serious soon. Because I feel very strongly, and I don't think we've talked about this before. I like comedy and wrestling in promos, in backstage segments, whatever. But once the bell rings, I kind of like it to just be a serious wrestling match. I don't like a lot of fucking around during the match.
yeah,
That's just my personal preference. I know there's some people, like someone like Santino Marella. You know, his vignettes and promos are hilarious. Like in the ring, I guess that's a bad example because he does kind of get away with it, and you kind of know what that is. But like, there are stakes here. This match affects the main event of WrestleMania. It's like,
yeah.
okay, you had your fun. Now let's get serious now. I don't
And it's
I don't
well,
like too much screwing around during the match.
yeah. And him and Owen, the potential there, for an instant classic, um, with those two in the ring. So um, I agree. You do kind of want to see them kind of get in there and take it seriously and deliver uh, for the type of match that they're going to have.
Yeah, and like I was like another note I wrote is like if this continues this way, it's just going to make Owen look foolish, which is like,
Yeah,
you know, this is someone that at least in theory could be in the main event at WrestleMania 12
yeah,
if he wins this match, and it's sort of like you don't want to make him look foolish.
yeah. I do think for all of the everything Sean got to do in promos and interviews and messing around here. Um, if he was, if you were ever maybe unsure if some things were predetermined, Sean knew and he acted that this was going to be his time. He was confident. I
Mhm.
remember his interview before the Rumble match, what he would promise and deliver on. And I don't know if it was maybe a little overboard, but that worked really well for his character. But I do like that you said that, maybe going too far would kind of maybe take away from Owen's legitimacy for a guy who did main event WrestleMania with Brett, or not WrestleMania, SummerSlam with Brett and delivered. And so I think that the potential for him and Sean is definitely there, and hopefully it would deliver.
Well, and I'm going to continue to be critical here because like um a lot of wrestling has to do with how things are presented. If someone is presented as a star, they'll be considered a star. Owen is not presented here as a threat. And I made a note here. because there's such bias towards Shawn, and it's so obvious Shawn is winning this. They could have made this a lot more dramatic by presenting Owen as more of a threat. And I was thinking, what a missed opportunity this is. Vince and Lawler should have been speculating about if Owen wins this match and Brett wins the main event, we'll have a rematch from WrestleMania 10 between two brothers. And by the way, Owen won that match at WrestleMania 10. Wouldn't you want to present that option? Like, wouldn't you want to talk about that on air to build drama for the viewers? And they completely missed out on that opportunity to me.
Yeah. Especially with Brett being world champion and going on defending his title right after this match too.
Right. So it's if Owen wins this and Brett wins later tonight, we could have a WrestleMania 10 rematch, brother versus brother. And oh, by the way, Owen won that match. Wouldn't that be an exciting WrestleMania 12 main event?
Or you could have a rematch from the WrestleMania 11 main event the year before. If Owen or if Shawn wins and then Diesel beats Brett.
Right. And they didn't talk about any of that, which I think is really a missed opportunity. And I think it made Owen look weak.
Yeah.
Um,
You're right.
so yeah,
I was kind of eating it up and enjoying it, but you're right. At the end of the day, um, what you could do to kind of lay groundwork and build heat for um, this match and the Brett Diesel match, it probably was. They didn't tap into that very well. I think you're absolutely right.
no, which made it seem like a conclusion. Shawn's winning this. Owen's not a threat. It's going to be Shawn versus whatever. Um, which it's like, tease it. Even if that's the case, just tease it. Make this seem more dramatic.
Yeah. Well, and at WrestleMania 10 too, you had Brett and Owen, and then Brett, had a chance and capitalized on winning the world title later on, and they did,
Yeah,
a lot of speculating with Lex and Yoko, and then Brett and Owen, and then those guys meeting. There were a lot of moving pieces,
yeah,
and it is the same thing here, because Brett and Owen were at 10, and then Shawn and Diesel were the main event. Well, the real main event at
yeah,
11.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the double kip up
Yeah.
with both these guys. I thought that was a cool spot. Um, Owen did that really nice overhead belly to belly that he does.
Mhm.
um, at one point, Owen, I popped so hard for this. Owen has Shawn in a camel clutch, and Laura invented the camel clutch.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Lawler always put Owen over hard on commentary.
Yep. He invented the sharpshooter. He invented the camel clutch. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I popped for that. I didn't know that was coming. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Owen does like a spinning heel kick where his leg just wraps around Owen's face. It looked really brutal.
Yeah.
Um, I made a note. I'm glad this finally got serious. Uh,
Hmm.
Owen power slams Shawn off the apron to the floor,
Yeah.
hits a nice missile drop kick, like a really nice kind of charging clothesline. Gets Shawn in the sharpshooter. There's a rope break. Owen acts like he won, which I that was one of those little things Owen would throw in his matches like that. Like I love when he would celebrate like something that you learned on the first day of wrestling school, and he would celebrate it like he just won an Oscar. You're like, yes, I did it. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, you gave him an arm drag, like. But
And then
yeah,
going
Owen acts.
forward with the two-time Slammy Award winning, he would
Yeah,
some of my favorite memories of Owen. But
I
yeah,
remember when the Hart Foundation got going, and all those guys had so much gold. Between Owen had the Slam A's and the tag belt and the IC belt, and Brett had the world title, and a
Davey
lot of
had the
gold.
European title.
Yep, a lot of gold.
Yeah, Owen has Sean in the sharpshooter. Sean crawls over uh, to the ropes and almost breaks it, and then Owen walks him back.
Hmm.
And I thought this was a uh, cool spot. Instead of just having Sean get over to the ropes right away, having Owen drag him back to keep him in there, I thought was a good spot.
I always like people that have submission finishes. I always like those little things they do, like dragging someone back if they get too close to the ropes, or like with Kurt Angle, like if he would
I
do
was
that
just
a lot,
gonna, yes,
and he'd be standing, and then he'd be like, "All right, done playing around," and he'd grapevine the legs and hook you, where it's like, okay, now you're not going anywhere. I like little things like that with submission moves.
yeah,
Or even like Jericho with the lion tamer, like he'd get it and then he'd be like, "No, I'm gonna make your heels touch the back of your head now," and he'd drop down and like,
yeah. From what I understand, uh, uh, a lot of the boys um, were not excited to be in the Lion Tamer.
I would imagine not. Well, I
Yeah.
remember Jericho talking about like, how come you don't do it the same way? How come the Walls of Jericho is so different from the Lion Tamer? He was like, I was wrestling cruiserweights in WCW. I can't do that to Kane. Like, like,
That's a good point.
um, let's see, where are we? So then, yeah, Owen acts like he won. Sean gets up. Owen hits an Insiguri. Sean sells like he's dead. Owen's just beaming with pride. Um, Sean's on the outside of the ring. Um, he's getting close to being counted out. And then Vince says on commentary that if Sean loses, doesn't matter how, so he can get counted out, Owen does get the title shot. So it's not just pin or submission.
Yeah, there is no
Um,
champion's advantage.
right. So Sean is almost counted out. Vince makes a point of saying if Sean loses by countout, Owen's going to Mania. And as Vince says that, Owen goes out and throws Sean back in. When Sean did not look like he was going to move anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, and then that also doesn't fit with me because Owen seems like a guy who would have gladly taken the countout victory
Oh
and
yeah.
bragged about it forever. So that I felt like was not fitting with Owen's character. So that kind of that spot kind of bothered me a bit. Um, so yeah, he throws Sean in the ring. Sean hits the forearm, the flying forearm. He kips up, hits a second forearm, the elbow drop off the top, slugs Cornette off the apron. He misses a super kick. Owen misses an Insiguri, like one after another. Just
Yeah.
very, I like when they pull stuff like that off well, where it's like miss super kick, missed Insiguri. Like,
Well,
um,
and Owen does hit an Insiguri earlier on,
yeah,
and then coming back, kind of going to the well again. Um, Sean ducks out of it.
yeah, because we've already established that Insiguri is a dangerous move for Sean.
Hmm.
Um, so I like that they, he hit him with it before, and then, yeah, missed super kick, missed Insiguri, and then Sean goes for a super kick the second time, hits it, and gets the win. Um, there's stuff I liked a lot here, and then stuff I didn't. I think I covered both of them um, here.
Um, this is, I think, one of the more prominent times because we're in a time in Sean. um, we're in a time in Sean's career where the super kick is, it's just established finish.
Yeah,
But now we're kind of getting into the sweet chin music
yeah,
phase of it, and so um, it was. I think it was important for Sean, if he's going to win with that, that it needs to be put over. It needs to become
absolutely.
a protected finish, and this was a good example of that. I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so Sean's celebrating his victory. He's dancing in the ring. He brings in a girl from the crowd. and he picks her up, puts her on his shoulder, and he does his little pose. And it reminded me a lot of Savage and Elizabeth back in the day.
That's right.
Um, and I did kind of pop because it's Sean's doing the pose with the girl on his shoulder. The girl is also doing the pose on
Yeah.
top of Sean's shoulder. So I thought that was cool. And then Sean, as he's exiting, he grabs a click sign from the crowd and kind of shows it off to the camera.
Yeah.
Um,
Conrad did ask Bruce if this was the bringing the girl into the ring, if she was maybe the daughter of one of the guys or somebody on like on the crew or something, and uh, I'm sure Pritchard knew at the time, but he absolutely did not remember, and so he's
oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, he's like, yeah, sometimes it would be predetermined, or sometimes in the moment. And,
Hmm.
but he seemed to not be able to say I don't know. He just
Oh,
said,
okay.
yeah, sometimes here, but he very clearly did not remember in
Oh,
this
okay.
instance in particular. But yeah, Sean kind of returns her to the crowd.
Yeah.
Um, and this is also I think a very iconic moment in Sean's career. He's uh, the boyhood dream is going to come true, and him dancing with that girl in the ring is
Yeah.
is like a really kind of it's a really cool and kind of a heartfelt moment for because he's still a relatively new babyface.
Right, yeah, like he was a baby face with the Rockers, but then he had a long run as heel as a
Yeah,
single star. So this is, yeah, this is his first run as a singles baby face, and it's yeah, like they show that clip a lot, like in like highlight reels and stuff, or like there's the one where there's some fans giving Sean flowers at ringside and the guardrail falls and he helps pick him up off the ground.
yeah.
I know that they show in highlight reels sometimes for Sean.
And then
Um,
that girl who was very excited um, to be able to hug Sean and not let go.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's trying to walk away and she's hanging on. And
Yep.
um, yeah.
One of the few times you see somebody uh, kind of break the rules of touching the talent or one of the boys, but it was really innocent and just kind of goes to show uh, you know Sean was over. He was very appreciated by the women fans of the product back then.
Yeah. um, so then we have a quick little WrestleMania 12 ad. And then Pettengill is on like a little podium in the arena and he's interviewing Piper while the cage is being set up behind them.
Yeah.
Um, Piper looks happy as always. Like anytime you see Piper, he's always happy to be there, or at least he comes off that way.
Yep.
He's the what is it, the interim president or the
President.
commissioner, or yeah,
Yeah, I had forgot that he was president, and no, because the commissioner would become a role later on, and then like the
yeah,
general manager of the brands would become a thing. But yeah, he was the interim president of the
yeah.
company.
So he comes out, he's saying he can't be bought. He announces Shawn Michaels is the number one contender. He puts over how hard Shawn worked to get there. Um, but he tells him to be ready for a fight, the fight of his life, whether it's Brett or Diesel. He said he doesn't feel bad for Yoko. He calls him
Yeah,
dumb. He says Vader is inbred and his mask is a jockstrap.
yeah,
uh, he compares Vader's hair to Mr. T's, which coming from Piper is the worst thing you can do is be compared to Mr. T. Because I know
yeah,
he fucking hated Mr. T.
yeah. Especially back in that time where having crossover matches, even just like the crossover into like the entertainment industry, but putting somebody in the ring for a match. I know he was not very he did not appreciate that at
or
all.
your main event of the biggest gamble the company has ever taken. Yeah. And I know he felt very strongly about he's not throwing a single punch. It's going to look weak. Let's stick to amateur. Like,
Yep.
if he throws a punch, it's over. Um, so yeah, he
But
compares Vader's hair to Mr. T's hair. He announces Vader versus Yoko at WrestleMania. Jim Cornette and Clarence Mason come out. And I'm like, when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, Corny and Piper. What a war of words these two could have.
yep.
Two of the greatest talkers of all time.
Mm.
Uh, Cornette says everyone's scared of Vader, and Vader got suspended because of that. Clarence managed to get Vader back. Um, Piper says Yokozuna is 640 pounds, 320 pounds per cheek. And if Vader loses, Cornette could end up cheek to cheek with Yokozuna. Piper smacks Cornette's ass. I mean, this was something just to kind of set things up for Mania while they built the cage, but I love this segment.
Yeah, this was very entertaining.
I kind of wished we had more Cornette and Piper going back and forth, because that could have been. Don't give them a script, man. Just let them go. Like,
Yep.
you'll get gold with those two. But I enjoyed this segment a lot.
Yeah, and this was also, Piper being a longtime fan favorite, one of the very first kind of anti-hero
Yeah.
um, people in the business, and he came out to a big ovation, but no, he was not going to come out and be this white meat babyface president.
Yeah, even as a babyface, he was able to stay true to who he was. Which again, this was pre Austin, pre NWO. Like, Piper really was a very unique individual, a very unique performer, and he kind of kept his credibility even though he was a babyface.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm gonna say what I want. I'm not gonna take any shit. Like, he's making fun of people, and
Yep.
um,
And then we would see him in the Hollywood Backlot Brawl coming up not too long after this.
oh, I can't wait to cover that.
Yeah. But yeah, I did just when he was talking about what's going on in the company, him kind of poking fun at um, Yoko and everything like that. He was just kind of pooping on everybody.
Yeah, which is weird because Vader's a heel, but Yoko just turned babyface, and he's sitting there calling him dumb, and um, but Piper's gonna be Piper, man. Like, it
Yeah,
worked for him.
yeah. Like I really did kind of appreciate that.
And I thought it was cool he put over, like, Sean, I know how hard you worked to get here and whatever. I thought that was cool, but be ready for the fight of your life. And
Yeah,
um,
and he also said, uh, I didn't write it down, but when him and Brett are announced, when Piper announced this is going to be an Iron Man match, and he kind of foreshadows with there must be a winner,
yeah,
early on, which would become very important in um, in the match. She said something here. I wish I'd written it down. Um, he builds up Sean, but he said something along those lines, kind of even foreshadowing the foreshadowing of you're going to have to win this or something like that. I don't know.
yeah. I remember that segment where he was in the ring with Sean and Brett together. I remember Sean bragging about what kind of shape he was in, and I remember Piper's like, "Yes, yes, you got wonderful abs," like whatever. And I remember the thing about, like, you better shake hands now because you two are never going to be the same again. And it's like,
Yeah,
you have no idea how right you are, Roddy.
yeah.
um, so yeah, that really fun segment. It kind of set some stuff up for Mania while they built the cage. And so now we've got our main event, the challenger, Big Daddy Cool Diesel versus the champion Bret Hart in a cage match. I
This
thought it
is
was noteworthy that there was no pre-match promos or video package from either of these guys prior to the match.
I did notice that as well. Um, this is their fourth outing.
Yeah, that was my next note. Is the fourth WWF title match on pay-per-view between these two in what, a year and a half,
Yeah,
maybe somewhere around there.
yeah. And because they
Because I
were
think they
at
started at Survivor Series '94,
yeah, and then
so like yeah, a year and change maybe.
yeah,
And they so yeah, four title matches between these two, and they've done it with Diesel defending versus Brett, Brett defending versus Diesel. Now we got a cage match, so it's yeah, it's
they're getting a lot of mileage out of this,
yeah,
and
they
at,
are.
at and at the same time, I don't think um, that pairing them together, was kind of beaten to death either.
I have different thoughts about this match than I do their other matches, which I will
That's fair.
we'll get into that as the match progresses. But so Diesel comes out, just looks like a bad motherfucker, man. Like, and I kind of, we've talked about it, ever since Diesel lost the title, and he's been that kind of edgy, Big Daddy cool. Like, I love this short era in his career.
Yep.
Um, I love the look of the cage. Like, just that blue cage is just, it brings me to a happy place. It makes me feel nostalgic. I know everyone who worked in it universally hated that cage, but as a fan, I just like the big blue cage.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big part of like some of the biggest matches from I
Yeah.
mean even like in the Hogan era
Yep.
up to now. Conrad did make a note when him and Pritchard were talking about this that this was the last pay per view with Big Blue, the cage.
Really?
Yeah, and
I
he
thought like Mick Foley and Hunter had a cage match with where
with
China
the Big
slammed
Blue
the.
one.
I think so. Where China slammed the door on Foley's head.
That's right.
Maybe that wasn't a pay-per-view match. I don't know. Maybe it was on Raw or something. I
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I just he brought that up, and yeah, so maybe they were a little off. I don't know, but um, yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of this cage, and uh, the 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 point I was trying to make with Conrad bringing that up is that as a fan, it is much easier to watch through this than it is to like a chain link fence.
right. And then eventually they started cutting big holes in the chain link fence for the cameras to shoot through.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it is visually because you can see all the action perfectly clear
Yep.
um, through the big blue cage, and I get why it would be a nightmare to work. And if you're a performer, which
Yeah.
is, you know, that's certainly important too.
That's a
Um,
real stiff cage.
um,
And then when guys would get their head rammed into it,
yeah,
like the whole thing would swing and shake,
yeah.
and just the you know type of bars those were. Like I would think that would be way more unforgiving than a chain link fence.
From
Personally,
everything I've heard, that is the case from people
yeah,
that have worked those. They have had more of those because remember the thing, and this I know was on Raw, Brett and Sid, where Brett lost the title, and they're taking the cage down, and Brett cuts that promo on Vince like this is bullshit,
that's right. Yeah,
and they're taking the cage down as Brett's yelling at Vince, but that was on Raw, so maybe
maybe he meant or he said pay per view, and I'm not
yeah,
remembering
I
it right,
mean
but
yeah, because you know yeah, because I don't know, I know they've had matches with this cage since, but they might not have been on pay per view, so
yeah,
maybe this was the last appearance on pay per view of this cage. But
yeah,
I did like that. Um, I didn't know which announcer, but somebody mentioned that Brett has never lost a cage match.
yeah.
I don't know if it was Vince or Lawler who said it, but I thought that was an interesting thing to point out. Um, both these guys looked so good here. Like this is like peak Diesel, peak Brett. Like just physically, they looked great.
Yep.
Um, Diesel dominates Brett early on, and it's interesting because this is the fourth match of these two that we've covered, and they're all high profile title matches on pay per views. And it's interesting how they've had different strategies in matches where sometimes Brett's dominating early on, sometimes Diesel's dominating early on, like sometimes Brett's really taking the fight to Diesel,
Hmm.
trying to win in a fist fight. Like, so it's interesting to see the different strategies to start a match between these two, and they played around with it over the course of these four matches, and I think that's cool.
Yeah. And in this instance, Brett's lumberjack strategy to chop down the big guys uh,
Yeah,
doesn't really that type of strategy can't really play out as well in the steel cage match as it could
right.
in some of the earlier matches.
Yeah, it's just cool because there's times where Brett's strategy is like, I'm going to out wrestle you. Sometimes it's sort of like, all right, we're going to have a fight. Like, so it's kind of cool that, they keep it fresh and come at it from different angles instead of repeating the same formula over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Diesel's just got beaten on Brett. You can hear him tell Brett it's going to be a long night
Yep.
as he's hammering him in the corner. Um, Brett turns things around. Brett's punches are so good. Like
Yeah.
I know I say that every time, but like his punches are so good. And then they take turns trying to escape through the door, which I like that spot. And it's funny because Diesel's so damn big. It's like you can just grab his foot from anywhere in the ring and
Yeah.
try to pull him back if he's like on his belly trying to get out. Like,
Yeah,
um,
it always seems like when you have some of the bigger guys in the cage matches, their ring always seems to be smaller, or it looks
yeah,
smaller.
it does. Yeah. Okay, so I got to ask you about this. How do you feel about the WWF slash E stipulation where you can win a cage match by escaping versus because kind of the old school mentality is the purpose of the cage is to keep you in. So it seems counterproductive to be able to win by escaping. Do you have any thoughts one way or another on?
Yeah, I know that the traditional reason for this was to keep them in the ring, but also to keep outside interference.
Right.
Um, but when I was a kid watching this, that was always, and there were some matches where that was the only way you could win was you had to
Yeah.
climb out. Um, I think I think that stipulation works really well. It gives a whole another opportunity for the guys to be able to work around and the psychology when you have guys who are really good at match psychology um, can really work that in. And I think back to Brett and Owen where they'd be just running for the door.
Yeah.
Um,
Owen would those dramatic dives he would do
yeah,
with his arms out.
yeah. Um, and I was surprised at how many times Diesel was um, kind of going for the door, and then I thought, it's probably got to be even though he is bigger, I don't know if that would really work to his advantage, having to climb all the way
Yeah.
up. Like on the face of it, it seems like you know he could just reach and pull himself over. But um, I I I think having that stipulation um, works really well, and it did in this match too. I thought.
Well, it's weird because I was raised on WWF, and that's always just what it is in WWF is you can escape through the door or over the top. However, I do see the logic in the purpose of the cage is you're locked in. No one gets in, no one gets out. You're stuck in there, settle it.
Yeah,
So I do get the logic of that it doesn't make any sense to try to escape a structure when the purpose of the match is to keep you in so you settle it once and for all. So I do understand that. However, I was kind of raised on the matches where you can escape.
Yeah. Yep. The
And I do agree with you that it does open up for there's a reason to there's the dramatic, oh, is he going to make it? And then so it does open the door for a lot of possibilities of trying to escape, or then, lots of falling from people trying to climb and things like that. So, I remember the Bret Owens superplex
yeah.
and, things like that. Like, so, I guess I don't feel that strongly one way or another, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it since we're covering it.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I was raised on WWF, and as far back as I can remember, being able to climb out was always a possibility. In anything that I can remember. And that just added a whole another, unique way to kind of build tension and,
Yeah.
kind of build heat in the match.
Yeah, I mean, I think both ways, I see the logic to either way you want to look at it. So, um, there was a spot I liked where Brett is in one corner climbing over the cage and Diesel is crawling out through the door on the opposite side. And just as
Yeah.
a visual, seeing like the two corners, it was very dramatic. And then Brett like climbs down and runs over in a hurry to
Yeah.
stop Diesel. I thought that was cool.
Hmm.
Um, I will say that this match doesn't feel as special to me as the others, just because the others there were reasons and there was a backstory, and
Yeah.
um, it's weird because it's like there is a backstory and a history between these two guys. There is a title at stake. This is the main event of a pay-per-view, and there's the cage match stipulation. But it still, even with all that, doesn't feel special to me
Do you
because it
think?
feels like it's more about Diesel and Undertaker.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, and especially how the match was. I don't want to say thrown together, but when they were interviewing Gorilla Monsoon at the Rumble, where it's like Diesel is now just the number one contender for uh, ruining the match with him and Brett.
Right.
Like that earned him a number one spot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I agree. And the story with Brett and Diesel, would he have kicked out of the jackknife that at one time? And could I kick out of it? I remember Brett saying
Yeah.
like in the interviews, just that a little bit was just built so much more excitement. When you start seeing those things playing out, it's like here it comes. What's going to happen now?
And the thing about it too is for me, I achieved closure on the Brett Diesel feud at Survivor Series.
Yeah.
So this seems unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
achieved closure, like the build up to that, the match, the ending, everything. Like I achieved closure, and I'm like, great, we can close the book on Brett Diesel. I am very satisfied with the whole arc of their feud. Now we'll move on. And it's like, no, we'll have a cage match.
Yeah. Um, I don't know, like that. Their match at Survivor Series, I think, is their best one.
Yeah,
And Diesel's little temper tantrum after the match, where
yeah.
he jackknifes Brett a couple times. Do do you think that left the door open for them to have a match like this, but it was just haphazardly thrown together, and that's why it maybe is like a little flat in compared to their
It's
previous matches?
it certainly left the door open, but to me this didn't feel like it was about the two people competing in this match. To me it was like Brett biding his time till Mania and Diesel and Taker. So when the highlight of a title match isn't the title or the two people fighting for the title, it doesn't feel as important to me. Like, to me, the story is Diesel Taker, not Diesel Brett.
Yeah. And with, I think it in kind of a strange way, like you said, the focus is Diesel and Taker, and the championship and Brett is kind of an afterthought,
Yeah.
even though he was the champion defending against each of them in both matches.
Yeah. No, I have some thoughts about that towards the ending for sure.
Mhm.
um, I really like Brett does his first turnbuckle bump, and the crowd just groaned. Just
Yeah,
everyone in that building was just like, oh, like
yeah. You can hear that thud.
just the life got sucked out of the whole building.
Yep, and the cage just kind of shudders a little bit.
Yeah, and it's just like, and then just Brett just drops down, just dead weight, like he just collapses afterwards, like so good. And it gets me every single time I see it. I've seen
Yeah,
it hundreds of times, and it never gets old for me.
yep.
So yeah, Diesel's beating on Brett, and he just looks like a bully. He's acting cocky. The crowd's booing. Um, Brett turns it around. He ends up going for the sharpshooter. Diesel reaches up with those long ass arms and grabs his hair, and just eye gouges him. And then I made a note because Brett does a side Russian leg sweep, and Brett has to like reach up to grab Diesel to get him back for it. Normally, Brett reaches to the side like this. He's got to go up, and
Yeah.
I just thought that was cool.
So, um, uh, kind of going back to this being USWA territory.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Again with Pritchard and Conrad, um, Brett is the clear baby face. Maybe Diesel is like an anti-hero, um,
Yeah,
but Brett's the clear baby face. I guess because this was USWA territory, Brett had cut some kind of really scathing promo on Lawler, and so Conrad said that he could tell that the crowd was probably more split than they would have been had they just not been in Kentucky, right by Memphis.
oh, okay.
Um, and this again, even with Brett and Taker, you know, Brett's the champion. Um, there's no reason for him, like even like how um, he was and like how the matches were with him and Taker and now him and Diesel. Um, I didn't notice that too much. That the crowd was maybe more pro Diesel than they would have been. I don't know. I didn't notice that really.
No, it seemed like a pretty pro Brett crowd for me. I mean, I didn't know the thing about Brett's Lawler promo, and I didn't even connect the dots that they were in USWA territory, so I wasn't listening for it. But to
Yeah,
me, not listening for it, it seemed like a pro Brett crowd.
yeah, yeah. That's what I thought too. Yeah, I was just thinking back to um, Pritchard and uh, Conrad talking about all the stuff going on around the match. Um,
Huh? Yeah, that's interesting. Brett goes to climb out of the cage. Diesel tries to stop him, and he kicks Diesel off, and then does his elbow drop off the top. Normally he does it off the second. This time he does it off the top. Brett goes to go it again. Diesel hits a low blow, and then Brett crotches himself on the rope, so it's like a double low blow. And Brett
yep.
always sold low blows really well, like just his
Yeah.
facials. Whenever he got a low blow, he always sold it so well.
Yeah. And then he just kind of fall over.
And then so like Diesel's like pulling himself inch by inch on his back towards the door by the ropes. Like he's just using the ropes to pull himself. He's on his back, just, looks like he's been in a war.
Yeah.
He's too beat up to try to stand. I thought that was a nice touch. And then Diesel's almost out of the ring when Taker comes out from under the ring,
Yeah.
yanks Diesel down below. Smoke is bellowing out as Brett escapes up and over the top.
Yep.
Um, Diesel
Taker.
comes out looking scared.
Yeah.
His pants are all ripped. Um, and then he gets up and over really fast.
Yeah. If he'd only done that a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So there's a lot to talk about with this ending.
Yeah.
Um, I know. I guess we should start with Brett supposedly refusing to take the jackknife for this
Yep.
spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
We've alluded to that before. I've heard Nash say that that was his breaking point with the company.
which it probably wasn't, but it probably pissed him off. But
Yeah, but I think that's a great thing if he's looking for a reason to leave.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he's always spoken very glowingly about Brett and how much he loved the matches with Brett and whatever. Like, you know, um,
Yeah, and I know people have always said that Brett has taken himself so seriously, um, which is
and I think
true.
that, yeah, I
But
mean, from everything I've seen and heard, but it's funny because I've heard Cornette say, like, yes, that's absolutely true. I wish anyone in the business nowadays took themselves half as seriously as Brett did back then.
but
um,
but yeah, we have Taker coming up and yeah, kind of returning the favor to Diesel for uh, ruining, because Taker had just tombstone Brett
right.
their last match.
So turnabout does seem fair play that it would appear that Taker had Brett beat, Diesel fucked it up. So it does seem fair that Diesel would have Brett beat with the jackknife, which would play into they've told that story their whole feud.
Yep.
He can powerbomb him, but he never gets to cover him and see if he can get the 3 count.
Yep.
And apparently Brett did not want to do that because he thought it would make him look weak going into WrestleMania, which it absolutely would. Everything we'll get there, but uh, um, so Brett didn't want to do it. I guess that pissed Nash off, and understandably so.
Yeah.
I get Brett's point of view, and I get Nash's point of view.
Well, and that is how, at Survivor Series, Brett took two jackknives after, um, and even though Brett is the champion, it does seem like they're just keeping him busy until he can get in there with Shawn. And this has been about building up Diesel and Undertaker. Um,
Yeah,
and I don't know if it would have made Brett look weak here, because I mean, with Taker coming up from under the ring, dragging Diesel down like something out of a horror movie, and then smoke pouring out. Um, I don't really know if there would have been a point in Brett taking the jackknife, but I also don't know, because Taker's pulling Diesel down into the grave, if it really would have been that damaging. I don't know. I can see both sides.
I can see both sides too, and I'm not picking a side. I will say that this match looks like Undertaker ruined a match. It does not look like Undertaker ruined a match that Diesel would have won. You know what I mean? Like prior to
Yeah,
Taker coming out, it's not like, oh, Diesel's got this. There's no way Diesel doesn't have this. He's got this one. You know what I mean? So it
yeah,
does.
yeah. No, I had not
and,
thought about that.
and I don't know if that's an important distinction. I guess it was for Kevin Nash, and I understand why, and I understand why Brett wouldn't want to do it. But yeah, it does. It looks like Taker ruined a match. It doesn't look like He
He
ruined a
cost Diesel
match
the title,
that Diesel had won.
which is how Diesel had come across. Taker had just tombstone Brett, and
Yes.
so Diesel did ruin the match, but more importantly, Diesel did cost Undertaker the championship.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean,
That is the distinction. I think you're right. I definitely
yeah,
had not thought about that.
but that's the thing is, so what's more important is Brett looking strong going into Mania or Diesel looking strong going into Mania?
Well, and also, how many times can Brett um, continue on as the top guy in the company as champion? In this case, um, maybe so had Brett been jackknifed, it cost Diesel the championship. But then you're also at the point to where Brett is just getting saved when he should have lost 4 months ago.
Well, that's the thing. Ever since Brett won the title, he has not been showcased. None of this has done anything for Brett. It does a lot to make you want to see Taker versus Diesel, but it does nothing for Brett. Like, he won the title with a small package out of nowhere, so he barely won.
Yeah.
Took a bunch of jackknives, got beat by Taker, but squeaked through and kept the title. Got his ass beat by Diesel. Taker ruined it. Brett squeaked through again with another victory. So none of this has done anything for Brett.
Yeah.
Who's going
And
into WrestleMania.
yeah, and again, I can see the distinction. Um, Diesel cost Taker the win, and here Taker just ruined the match. But again, if I'm like you said, if I'm Brett, you know, I don't know if it does a whole lot putting the champion in a holding pattern for so long either. I'm obviously biased. I am a Brett fan, but
I will say, because again, I don't have a side on this one way or another, so I'm just kind of throwing out ideas that from both sides. Brett is not wrestling Owen or Davey or whatever. These matches that he's getting screwed, he is wrestling monsters.
yeah,
So it's one of those things where, like you could look at like, when Shawn feuds with The Undertaker a year or so from now, Shawn wins all those matches, but he's not like, yeah, I kicked Undertaker's ass. It's like he makes it through by the skin of his teeth. And when you're a smaller champion wrestling monsters, that's probably how you're going to be showcased a lot of the time. So, I mean,
yeah,
if this happened in a match against, you know, Owen Hart or whatever, it's different than a guy you're wrestling Undertaker and he's got you beat, or
yeah,
And the
yeah,
thing is, on the other side of it, I will say, like, because of the way that Taker ruined the match was so spectacular, I don't know that you really think, like, did Diesel have him beat before that happened or not? I don't know if that's really important because all you're thinking is the dude just came out from under the ring.
yeah. But if that's the case, how does Brett get out of the cage to win? If he just got jackknifed, and then even if he crawled through the door, but especially to climb over, if he just got jackknifed and if he was down and out because it's a cage match, uh, what happens? What happens then? I don't know that it would uh, discredit the jackknife or anything for Brett to have had to get up and get out, but lots of moving parts to this either
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I'm just trying to look at it from all angles and stuff because I really don't have a side. I see both people's point of view, but I mean, this really does from the second the ref's hand hit the 3 count. This Brett's title reign has just been to make other people look good, and it really has not done Brett any favors. Um, it was very effective at making me very interested in seeing the Undertaker versus Diesel, though. So, in that sense, Brett did his job very well.
Yep.
Um, Another thing I did want to bring up, and I've heard Kevin Nash talk about this. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Nash had an idea.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this?
With the gray streak in the hair.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess I believe Nash came up with the idea and he wanted to do it. And I believe he still stands by that he wished he could have done it, that he would have emerged from below the ring with white hair.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess for whatever reason it didn't happen. But
Maybe
I just
Vince
thought
or
that
Patterson said, no,
I
no, that's going
yeah, I
too
guess
far.
someone didn't like it. I get for whatever reason, I thought it was interesting that it was a Nash idea, and
Hmm.
he still, from what I understand, stands by that and thinks it would have been cool. But
Yep.
um,
Conrad and Pritchard did talk about that.
did he
And
say what did Vince just not like it or something or?
um, Pritchard just said he didn't. I don't think he said Vince in particular, but it was just kind of the same thing. That would have been, going a little bit too far. And Conrad, was not letting them,
A
just
little
kind
bit
of,
too far. Undertaker fucking died and was resurrected and
yes,
rose
exactly.
to the heavens, and but white hair is too far. Okay.
Yeah. And plus, I believe they were just talking about like a white streak, not,
Oh,
turn
okay.
gray too. Uh, But yeah, Nash sold being dragged down into his grave underneath the ring. Great.
It was well executed. It looked cool. Just him coming, Taker coming out and just dragging him in the way.
He was just like, no, no, no. Like
Yeah,
it was
like
like he was being dragged underwater to drown or something.
it looked like something out of a horror movie. He sold it well. Just the way he like got pulled in, and then the smoke. It did look cool, and it just even like the little touch of like his pants were ripped when he came out, and um, Diesel made it look like he is in fact afraid of the dark. I know
I ain't afraid of the dark.
at the last encounter he made it clear that he wasn't, but he looked like perhaps he is.
Yep.
But I think he didn't oversell it to the
Yeah.
point where it made him look bad. I think he sold it just the right amount when he came out. Um,
Well, and if you're being dragged underneath the ring and smoke comes out, you know, even if and which is what they did, they just kind of left it at that. Nash comes out kind of worse for wear. Like you said, his pants are ripped. Um, if that doesn't shake him up a little bit, then the whole angle right there, like that whole spot is for nothing. And then it does look silly.
right, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think he sold it the right amount. If he had no sold it, that it would have killed it. If he had oversold it, it would have been cheesy. So he did it just right. The white streak probably would have been a bit much. Um, I just thought it was an interesting what could have been. Um, I do remember the thing, and it must have happened probably between this and Mania with Diesel looking at himself in the
Yeah.
coffin. That was so cool. That
Yeah.
was really cool.
I only heard how they pulled that off in like the last few months.
Yeah,
How the shots they cut to of him laying there were recorded beforehand.
yeah, that was. I didn't know how they did that either, because it
Yeah.
was like that's him. Like that's not Brian Lee dressed up or Glenn Jacobs dressed that's him in there that he's
Yeah.
looking at. Like I didn't know for the longest time how they did that, but it
Yeah.
was such a cool visual and the
Yep.
way he sold it. Again, his facials looking down at himself in the like super well done.
And that's the thing. It was done kind of by clever editing, but even if you are watching that live, you've got the cameraman there in. It's just a dummy, but you're in the crowd. You're looking up, and
Yeah,
there's Diesel there. Like that was, I think, a really cool and clever way to get so much more mileage out of that little spot
yeah,
than you would have done. And you know nobody there, I imagine, was wise to the fact that they weren't cutting to the cameraman in front or on the side of the casket, and you're farther back and you're just looking up like that. I remember watching that like as a teenager,
yeah.
and that was just so cool.
It was cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, Brett takes off because he's the champ. He's not important, so he leaves. Uh, Diesel very quickly gets up and over the cage to run away from Taker, and then Taker climbs up the cage. He's in the corner, and he does almost like the Kane. He puts his arms and he's like got him up, and he doesn't do the drop, but it looked almost like he was going to do what Kane would end up doing. That kind of pose he did with the arms.
Yep.
Um, and that's how we leave In Your House 6.
So I do have just maybe like a little postscript thing
Okay.
about In Your House, but I do want to, I don't know, well, match of the night.
Razor and Kid. I think
I,
Sean and Owen would be runner up, but Razor and Kid, I'm going to give that to them.
yeah, I think Sean and Owen would be my match of the night, moment of the night.
I have two. Uh, the Piper Cornette segment, I enjoyed that a lot. And I think the runner up would once again be Sean and Owen, that high five spot. Um,
Yeah, my moment of the night is Sean's victory lap.
yeah, with Vince's panties on his head.
Yeah. All right. Um, any closing thoughts for the main part of the episode and for the In Your House as a whole?
I think overall it was a pretty good show. And I think one thing I give this show credit for is it put all the pieces in place for WrestleMania. So I think in that sense it was very successful.
Agreed.
But the show itself, I just on its own, I would describe as pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, man, they were hot on Sean. 96,
Yep.
and this lived up to that and then some. I mean, even though it was just a little pyro, he's on top of the house. If you get double pyro just in your entrance, that's big.
It's funny because in hindsight, we were kids when a lot of these shows were covering when we watched them for the first time, and I remember as a kid, who's gonna win? I don't know. I have no idea. And then like, look at how someone's portrayed, man. Like,
Yeah. One of the I know Mania guys will get big entrances. When Cena had his Million Man March down the aisle,
oh yeah,
where
everyone
they
was
were,
dressed like Cena on both sides of the aisleway, and he
yeah,
ran
and they were
down.
saluting him.
Yeah,
It's like, even as a kid, and I wasn't a kid when this happened, but even if I were a kid, you can't suspend that amount of disbelief and then sit down and go who's gonna win.
see, the thing is, see, my point was the opposite. I think I was just a really dumb kid because I would wonder.
Yeah.
Like, I
Well,
would see the discrepancy, and like this guy walked to the ring to theme music, and this guy came out, you know, with Metallica playing him to the ring, and Miss America's on his arm, and whatever. Who's gonna win? Like, I have no idea. So I think
yeah,
I was just dumb that I was young enough for him, just sort of like, I have no idea who's gonna win this. And then as an adult, you go back and watch these shows, or even like current stuff, and it's just sort of like, oh, okay, we know who this is, who's winning this one. And
yeah,
as a kid, I was too dumb to, like, I still wondered.
yeah. Well, and what I was saying with Cena is that that might have been the first time where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't suspend my disbelief for this. But as a kid, yeah, I would watch it, and whatever they told me to like, I typically liked, and whoever won, I never questioned it.
Yeah, like it'll be like, this person's escorted to the ring by a garbage man, and his opponent, the president of the United States is doing the ring announcing, announcing his entrance. Like, I wonder who's coming out on top here. Like,
Yeah. All right.